some challenges, some which I think have been addressed, but still, we still refer to the old situation that it was. I pushed some of the limits. Mr. Chair, it is not correct that public servants put their declaration to envelope, seal it, and give it to the Auditor General. Because the first question I asked when I assumed office as Auditor General was, in case we went to court, because mind you, the Constitution provides that the declaration can be requested by a court. So the court asked for Mr. A's declaration of assets and liabilities, and I presented it, and the court opens it, and they find newspaper inside. Will I be able to convince the court that I didn't put the newspaper inside when I've issued a certificate that he or she has actually declared? So I put it on myself that somebody should challenge me. If you brought a declaration sealed, you will have to open it for us to at least be sure that that document is the declaration and actually you authored it. Therefore, we normally ask that you should bring an ID with your signature. And we normally took a copy of that ID and attached to it. So it is not any longer true, except if after I left office, they've gone back to the status quo, then I don't know. But during my period, it was not possible for you to just seal an envelope and brought it to me and get a certificate. So we have gone past that. But the critical thing is this. We should ask ourselves, when they declare assets and liabilities to Mr. A, is it enough to put it on paper and give to the person and say, I've declared assets and liabilities? Is that the meaning of declaration to someone? I think declaration will require the person being able to see what is very important in this equation. And let me also plead to say that, in my considered opinion, if we are going to amend the Constitution, then that mandate should be taken away from the Auditor General. That is not the traditional work of an Auditor General. When I assumed office, I was very mindful of it. But I kept telling people, my key job is to audit. Let me do the audit first. Because if I'm doing asset declaration and the audits are still in arrears, I think I have failed. Everybody hears of an Auditor General as somebody who audits. Is that not it? And Article 1 is, if you go to Clause 2 of Article 187, that is the mandate which is there. But then 2A says declaration should also come to Auditor General, and any Auditor General will be more mindful of the auditing than assets and liability declaration. So in many jurisdictions, this is done by the anti-corruption agency, if it should be done and done well. So it is my considered opinion that we should consider that situation, if it is possible, to move it to an anti-corruption agency, which my brother here is calling for. And I can support the view, but I want to also plead with the Commission on two things. First and foremost, as we try to amend the Constitution, one thing we should try to avoid is creating unnecessary structures in the public service. Our public funds are already overburdened by too many structures. If you look at the amount of money we used to pay public servants, the amount of money we used to do their, what they call administrative expenses or the recurrent expenditure and the others, what is left for the people to construct good roads, hospitals, etc., becomes too little. So we must be mindful anytime we are proposing new structures to balance it, to ensure that we do not overburden the public funds, say that service delivery to the people suffer at the end. Mind you, service delivery to the people comes after those who are occupying the position are satisfied. So once you create the position, they will take first before providing service later on. So
in effect, you are suggesting that we should relocate that task to Shraj?
Yes. If Shraj can do it, I think I have always been of a different view as far as the assets and liabilities declaration or default in declaration is concerned. My personal view again is that the Constitution says before taking office. So if you didn't declare and you are assumed office, you have assumed office unconstitutionally. So what should we do to you? Move from office. That's what I thought was supposed to be the natural consequence of occupying office with that declaration. Can we imagine a situation where the president says, I've won election, so I don't need to be sworn in? I'm just going to start as a president. Would we agree to that? I don't think we are going to accept that. But the Constitution says before taking office, declare. And now Parliament by itself decide even to amend the Constitution by saying that, oh, we are giving you 6 months to declare. And that much, which is not in the Constitution. So it means the president respects, Art 550 as against Article 186, all regimes. I remember, Honorable Gloria Kufu. He wrote a letter to Occupy Ghana acknowledging that Occupy Ghana's position that the provision in Art 550 is unconstitutional. She agrees. But then how to amend Art 550 has remained as it is up to today. So I think if we should find a solution, I can agree that it is going to be very difficult for some positions like the Speaker, for instance, to be able to declare assets before taking his position. Because the election is done I think around midnight or thereabout, and he must start immediately. Why can't we say within a week? A limit of, say, a week is fine. But beyond that, the person will have sized the office and already know how juicy it is and start doing anticipatory declarations. Anticipatory declaration is where somebody has a piece of land and then he declared that that land has 5-story building. Meanwhile, there's nothing on it. So that when he leaves office and there's 5-story building and you ask him, say, bring the earlier declaration, and you see that I had it. So I think we must have to take the assets and liabilities declaration seriously. To complement my brother Kwejo's position, I would like to plead that corruption is so important that if we can have a chapter dedicated to corruption, defining what constitutes corruption more comprehensively, and some of the do's and don'ts in the public service. For instance, there is an emerging trend where the legislature is making incursions into the powers of the executive. Now, members of parliament are approving for themselves monies out of the gate fund to go and do development work. Who oversees them? When the Procurement Act, I said it to somebody, I think I have to say it in public. When the Procurement Act, the bill was prepared, there was no member of parliament on the entity tender committees. I remember at the workshop, I argued vehemently that they should remove the Attorney General representing himself on the board and also on entity tender committees. Because anytime there's going to be a prosecution of procurement offenses, it is the decision of the Attorney General. So it is not good for him to be a referee and a player at the same time. After listening to my argument, the bill was passed with members of parliament also. They argued that they were going to preempt the corruption. If it has been preempted, I think you and I would, it must not have this kind of caliber. For instance, what is wrong with institutional representation? Maybe the gap representation to the board of the Public Procurement Authority instead of, if you look at it now, currently the Minister of Finance recommends about 5 some office of the Auditor General, Mr. Chair. I have some suggestions because I think the Office of the Auditor General plays a vital role in the fight against corruption. The current Constitution, Clause 7 of Article 187, mandates the Auditor General, actually under the B, to disallow and surcharge expenditures. I hope you know of this story. And this was not happening until Occupy Ghana went to Supreme. Fortunately and unfortunately, I was then in the seat, so I have to disallow and surcharge. But the story, it has died down more or less. Discretion of the Auditor General anymore. Once you come across this, illegal expenditure, they say it is no more discretionary, it is mandatory. So they said that may has been interpreted now not to be anything which you can decide. It is no more at the whims and caprices of the Auditor General. But because of what happened to me, when I was disallowed in Tikuma, the sun does not go and sleep under it. So more or less people have taken this out of it. I think we may have to look at how do we ensure that it does not become something which one Auditor General may decide to do and the other may decide not to do. I think we must look at that. But in looking at that, I propose that we look at Article 189 of the Constitution, which established the board for the audit service. I think it will be in line with good practice if the board is internal to the audit service. Currently, the board chair and the members are all appointed by the president. If you look at the EC, it is a service that the president imposes people on you to hold you left and right. And people may not understand. They may think that, oh, the main job of the board is to recruit staff. And the Auditor General of, Rwanda said, if somebody has to recruit people for you, then how independent are you? Because they recruit all sorts of people, including people who are just there to spy over you. And I don't think it is the best. So if we can amend that, we have lessons already from the current constitution, which makes the management or the board internal to the organization, like the Electoral Commission.
No, I don't understand how you do that. So we should make it. What about just taking the board out and having a public service?
That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
That we take the board out. Like if you look at South Africa, they don't have a board. You look at Kenya, they don't have a board. There's only
so that recruitment and staffing will be done through the Public Service Commission.
Exactly. If necessary, through the Parliament as well. If you are not the entire staff, the Auditor General.
Sure.
The appointment of the Auditor General and those.
No, I mean the staff. So you said that the argument for maintaining the board is that they are in charge of recruiting and stuff like that.
So but Public Service Commission, just like how Electoral Commission and others do it, the Audit Service can do the same. But the appointment of the Auditor General also in consultation with the Council of State and then approved by President must also be looked at. It is not a good practice. Normally, it must receive the approval of the legislature before the President do the swearing in or the appointment. And there must be some qualification. We have been lucky so far that the Auditors General appointed our professional accountants. One day, if I'm a president, I'll appoint my friend a carpenter to become the Auditor General of Ghana. And if you ask me, I'll tell that the Constitution, there is no law telling about the Constitution and qualification. Look at the Kenyan law, which you have been talking about. It says you must be a minimum of 10 years. If you come to Uganda, near them, 15 years. Almost all the laws, they give a minimum qualification of being a professional accountant before you become an Auditor General. But we have left it open, and I think that must be looked at. Again, the situation where Auditor General reaches a retiring age and can be given a contract, we must also look at it. It is not the best practice. In most of those laws, if you look at the Kenya, the Uganda, the South Africa, etc., there's a term of office. The Auditor General is given a term of office of maybe 8 years or 10 years, depending upon what we like. And after that, that is it. You don't go the second time, because the second time means a lot of negotiations. And I hope you understand what that negotiation means. So it's not good for any Auditor General to go in for that. So I think...
So let's say we have a non-renewable term of, say, 7 or 8 years.
Yes, that's
and
it.
Then, but you have to give a maximum retirement age so that, you know,
yes, in
whichever is earlier, right?
In some jurisdictions, it will say that you have a maximum of maybe 8 years and the age of 60, whichever comes first.
First, okay, sure. So 65.
So if you go for maybe a 20-year-old accountant, he must retire within 8 years. But if he goes for a 58-year-old, maybe after 2 years, you must go, whichever comes first.
Yeah.
I think, okay. Yes. Then, finally, I would like to end by saying that I also support the idea that we empower private citizens to get involved in the fight against corruption. Because I think this is an offense which affects all of us. And we should not leave it at the decision of, well, we will say a department or a ministry, but it's usually one person's decision. You may decide that Kwejo is too much a good person to be prosecuted. But if we empower or put a system in place whereby a fiat or licensing can be given to private citizens so that they can fully go and do the prosecution, it will be good. And like Kwejo said, we must try and make sure that we don't use knowledge prosecutor to go and rescue friends. So we must come out with a subordinate legislation on what are the grounds on which government can say, I'm no more interested in prosecuting this case or prosecuting this case, so that we all know that it meets the criteria or it does not. I think I'll stop here. If there are any specific questions for me, I will take. Yeah.
It's just a quick follow-up. Mr. Dolmo, you mentioned that a fiat, upon a fiat, whose fiat? Is it the Attorney General's fiat or whose fiat?
At the moment, it's the Attorney General who does that. But if we separate it from the Attorney General and give it to Shraj at some, I think I heard, or a different person, then that person must also be able to allow the private sector to be involved in the prosecution. I don't know whether I'm clear.
But I'm thinking, do we really need a fiat? Should we not just make it available if you think that...
That is preferred, actually. That is preferred.
Like an Article 2, if you have an Article 2 action, you can have a similar Article 2 action where a private person who has knowledge of corruption and has evidence of it does not have to go through the prosecutor, but can also go ahead and prosecute, and maybe the incentive is that you get some of the damages if you recover.
Whatever percentage. Yeah.
I have a little question, please. I've always wondered that we give the Minister of Finance a whole day to address the entire country through Parliament and tell us how our monies are going to be spent. But we don't give the Auditor General the same space to tell us how the monies were actually spent. Do you think that in the fight against corruption, having one day where the Auditor General presents his report with the same kind of platform and the same kind of visibility, which also would point out where we went wrong, where monies were not properly spent, would that be helpful?
Yeah, it is one of the international practices, anyway, by the INTOSAI, the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. So if you notice, or if you Google, you'll find that every year, the Auditor General of South Africa, for instance, will organize a public event where he submits the report to the Speaker and gives the Speaker highlights in the report to say, this is how we are performing. We have stolen about this percentage has gone here, and this has gone there, and here is the evidence that I have. And the press picks it up from there. You may recall that when I did some audits in the past, especially on liabilities, etc., I also organized that, and the government was very, very happy because the liabilities were not their liabilities. So we're very, very happy. Then later on, the leader of government business, Honorable Chairman Sabunsu, the Council he went to town and said, no, now you are committing unconstitutionality because you even submit the report and publish it. You should not publish it. Later on, the Attorney General, Godfred Odame, even asked the Auditor General, my successor, to pull down his report from the website because it should not be published, etc., forgetting that Section 23 of the Audit Service Act says the Auditor General shall publish immediately he submits it to the Speaker. Notwithstanding the law, even the Attorney General and members of Parliament were on the Auditor General. So maybe some of these things can be clarified.
May I follow up on that point about the Auditor General giving an independent report? I noticed that your office, the Auditor General's office, is not placed in the chapter on the executive, right? That it is placed, unlike the Attorney General, your office is under the chapter on finance.
Yes.
Most of the provisions of that chapter actually relate to Parliament and how budgets and all of those things are done. And maybe that's also in keeping with the tradition of the office, which is that it is considered, at least in the common law tradition, as an officer of Parliament. Should we remove the President completely from the appointment process for the Auditor General? In some places, actually, you go through a process, but it is Parliament that actually appoints. Would it signal, in terms of the independence of the office, would it, apart from whatever substantive merit there is to it, would it give a better signal of independence if the office holder was not appointed by the President, but was appointed by Parliament or whatever committee or Parliament, however the process is, if ultimately the appointment was not made by the President, so that it would give you the sense of being a proper officer of Parliament?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, we have 3 types of audits in the public sector. The type we practice is emanating from the Westminster system, that is the British. If you go to some jurisdictions like Mozambique, the number 2 judge in the country is the Auditor General. So he's a very senior judge. So he can convict you. He goes and do the audit, prosecute you himself. Because Parliament cannot go down and do the detailed work of seeing how the money has been used and etc. So they appoint an officer who does that. So the function is that of Parliament, helping the Parliament to exercise the oversight over the public funds. In that light, it makes a lot of sense if the appointment of the Auditor General is from Parliament. However, the practice is not strictly that way. If you look around the world, there are several jurisdictions where Parliament is involved, but the presidency is also involved. Like the Kenya we are talking about, you talk about even South Africa, Uganda, etc. The president nominates, Parliament vets and approves before the appointment is done. But the question is, what is the Auditor General coming to do? He holds the president accountable. So the first thing that any president would like to consider is the person who will not be as stubborn as the one speaking now. So that, when he said this one, you can oversee it, you say, yes, I have agreed. So I think if we really want to signal that we have an independent Auditor General, I'll go with that proposal, that Parliament does the advert, do the vetting and everything, and say, this is the guy we have settled on, who will be reporting to us on how you use public funds. I think that is a good way to go.
Okay, Mr. Dalom, just a follow-up on that. To the extent that the Auditor General would have to vet the work of Parliament as well.
Yeah.
Would it not be a better idea for the person to apply independent to the Public Services Commission instead of being appointed by Parliament, whose work you also have to vet at some point?
Yeah, but you will be auditing the Public Service Commission too.
Well, but you applied as an individual.
Yes.
And
that's the same thing which the parliaments do. They invite application that the position of Auditor General is vacant. Those who meet this criteria apply. Then you go through. The truth of the matter is that...
So in which case there is no nomination?
Yes. No
but
nomination.
You apply as an individual? Yes. Okay.
Yes, you apply. What is going to happen is that some people say, if we move the power from the presidency and send it to Parliament, what about Parliament also being audited?
Yes.
But the fraction of the cake which goes to Parliament is very small. We are talking about materiality.
Yeah. Besides, Parliament is a 275-member body. Exactly. The president is one.
Exactly. So I think moving that direction gives, especially not only the appointment. When we talk about appointment, then the removal must also follow. Parliament must also agree before you can remove. In the recent case of Sierra Leone, Yes, the Auditor General was removed only when the Parliament was mobilized to agree. I hope you understand that English.
Yes.
Yes. Thanks.
On this issue of, now that we are talking about the Auditor General, what about the Public Accounts Committee? How can that body be, what can be done about it as part of this anti-corruption architecture? Because, you submit your report to Parliament or to that body of Parliament. It has all these routine hearings, but nothing happens. Is there something that can be done to either empower it to be more effective, or what's the nature of the relationship? How do we structure the relationship between the audit that is done by the Auditor General and then the Public Accounts Committee, so that we get some mileage out of what it is that they do, those hearings they do?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That is also another issue of concern. In my opinion, I'm of the view that when there are infractions in the form of illegal spending or unlawful spending, the Constitution mandates the Auditor General fully to take responsibility for that. So if you read clause 9, is it 9? No, 7. Clause 7B of the Constitution, you see that the Auditor General can disallow and surcharge the people, etc. Then I think clause 9 takes it away from Parliament to say that if you are aggrieved by the disallowance and surcharge, appeal at the High Court. So you go to High Court. I am of the view that, and I tried that, but I was not successful. I was telling the Parliament that they should restrict themselves to control issues, system controls, internal controls, so that what occasioned those breaches, so that the heads of institution will submit or will make submission to Parliament or the PAC what measures they are putting in place to prevent the reoccurrence of those type of infractions. But they are not interested in that. In my view, you could demand from all the audited institutions, tell me the infractions which occurred, what controls you are putting in place, and what measures you have taken. So looking even at the controls you have taken or you have put in place, you may not need to be invited. It beats my mind when somebody is reported to have embezzled 3,000 in Bumpurgu or Bolga, and then the head of the institution, the accountant, the internal auditor, etc., they are all invited to appear before the Public Accounts Committee. At least they'll spend 3 days, because they'll arrive the first day, attend the second day, and maybe the third day they take off. Also incurring more additional public expenditure. So if we can avoid that and identify the role of the Public Accounts Committee as overseeing the internal control weaknesses that occasion that.
So instead of doing a case by case, they do a systemic overview or review of the, you want them to like focus on the systems, yes, why they broke down or
yes,
stuff like
actually,
that.
when I was working in, many people don't know this, when I was working in Accountant General's department, there was some infraction. I've forgotten the figure. It was a very small amount. So I told the Public Accounts Chairman that I can pay for it so that we don't discuss it. It was a waste of our time. Because I don't see why the whole Public Accounts Committee, with the Accountant General of the Republic and his team, are coming to discuss something like 200 Ghana cedis. I think it doesn't add up. So we may have to structure it so that they address internal control weaknesses and challenges and update Parliament on how they have resolved the issues, not the individual petty issues of 200,000, 300,000, 5,000. I think it's a waste of all of us, our resources and time.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Dolman. I'm just thinking that learning from our history, would you suggest that before the Auditor General or even the Electoral Commissioner is removed, or special prosecutor, should he or she be given the opportunity in Parliament or before a committee of Parliament to be given a fair hearing before his removal?
Yes, that's what I said, that if we are going to do the appointment through the Parliament, then removal may also have to go through Parliament. But even if not, I agree again with the suggestion that for all those independent institutions, be it the Commissioner for Electoral Commission or Auditor General or whatever, at least Parliament should play a role so that people will agree. In fact, at least to give the Auditor General or the Commissioner or whoever the opportunity to defend him or herself. But this is usually not done, and it ends over there. So I think it would be a good idea.
Thanks. That it's encouraged that we should involve traditional means, traditional methods, because when a problem is serious, you look for serious solutions as well. I know we're a secular state. You know, Ghana is not a religious state or one form or the other. But are you aligned to that thinking? You know, something out of the box. That if you, of course, if you declare, all of us, we know our religious persuasions. If I'm a Catholic and I'm taking the oath, the committee members here took the oath of office and then the oath of secrecy. And we took the oath by our various religious persuasions. I'm a Catholic, so I swore by the cross. And so if you're a traditionalist and you are assuming an office of this kind, you swear by whatever that, so that there's equality of treatment. Now, if there are supposed to be sanctions, can we employ Nogopo and other power, Antwanyama, and other powerful traditional means? And that before you take office, you subscribe to that method. Okay, because if the problem is too big, then we have to probably look at answers outside of the traditional means of resolving our problems. You may answer this or not answer this, but you know, in the public domain, this has been thrown around. It's been the subject of stewardship than the court system or committee of discipline committees and all of that. What's your thinking on this? Thank you.
But I don't believe that that is what we need to do. Because I've worked in other institutions like the world and said largely they are not corrupt. Because the system will not allow you. The problem we have in Ghana is that there are no consequences for misbehavior. I don't think it's because of religious background or an oath we did not subscribe to. Until Friday, when I returned from Germany, I was driving a colleague's vehicle in Germany. And I looked for the road. But when I was coming this morning, it just occurred to me that I'm no more looking for the road signs because there are no consequences here. So if it doesn't matter who you are, once we found you, there are situations where we know that you and I, we know that even people who have subscribed to vows and etc. are even abusing people's rights and violating children and etc. So I will not go that way. I think if we should put systems in place, systems that don't look at who you are or whoever is involved, I think we should be able to overcome corruption easily. Let me give you a small example. When I assumed office as Auditor General in Ghana, it did not lost on me that there were some institutions, I don't want to mention their name, they did not even accept to be audited. They thought they were above audit. Even though they are mentioned in the Constitution. They did not accept. Anytime you send, they send them a letter to say that they are going to be audited, they say they are busy. They have busy schedules, so postpone it, we will let you know later on. So I wrote to say the Constitution requires that I produce my report within 6 months after the end of the year. Therefore, if I ask you that you are coming to audit and you are not available, I write to the minister. Who asked? See the chief of staff and say, look, I know, but me, I don't fear the green quickly. So no problem about that. But I don't want to spoil your institution. One thing I know is that you have a very good command structure. Identifies an infraction, he makes a recommendation. If you address the recommendations, we are at peace. But if you don't address the recommendations, you will go to Public Accounts Committee with your green uniform. And to be honest with you, they were addressing 100%. At times, even when you recommend that they should do this within a month, within a week, they write back and say it has been done.
I think it would be helpful to have a provision in the Constitution to the effect that a public institution or body that did not or refused to submit itself to an audit shall not receive public funds in the subsequent year or something.
Mr. Chair, I think it will be a nice one, just one sentence. But I tried to test that in the case involving Crowe and Associates, a senior minister, because the senior minister raised an issue that for national security reasons, they didn't give the evidence of work done by Crowe and Associates. And I said, let's go and test it. So we went to the Supreme Court and we wanted interpretation as to whether national security issues are exempted from audit, because the institution itself is audited annually. So how come some selected issues are exempted, and how do we determine that? Well, anyway, we have several other arguments, like it was an afterthought, because when they raised the audit of that came in, but the Supreme Court dodged the question. All that they did was that they said, oh, go and give the evidence to the Auditor General. And Auditor General come within 10 days and tell us whether you are satisfied or not. On the 5th day, the president said I should go on leave. On day 6, the new auditor. I'm told there are some institutions for more than 15, 20 years. They have never been audited. Because anytime you inform them, they will tell they are not available. They are very busy, and that was all.
So you mentioned this problem who reach 60, right? There's also the additional related problem of acting, being in an acting position in an office that is supposed to be constitutionally independent. And I think, maybe the Auditor General is not the only area where that practice occurs. I think it's happened with SHRAD, it's happened with other offices where there is a vacancy, and rather than confirm somebody in the position, it's an independent office. And I agree with you that whether it's by contract extension or by using an active appointment, it undermines the independence of the person, because that person then feels somewhat, that they have to, for lack of a better word, suck up to the appointing authority in order to be confirmed in the position. Would Auditor General, any independent office, or the incumbents, whoever it is that is holding that position, is essentially deemed to have been confirmed in the role, or just so that we don't have a situation where presidents hold these offices vacant for
a long time,
longer than is necessary, right? Maybe if there's a vacancy within 30 days, confirm a person in that role, so that we don't have this acting situation happening in independent constitutional offices.
Yes, I will say that before coming, I was actually perusing a lot of laws because of what we were coming to discuss here. And I don't remember very well whether it's South Africa or Kenya. The law provides for a deputy. So it talks about the Auditor General and 2 deputies, and said the senior-most deputy may act, but not more than 6 months. So you have a time limit within which, if you get him or her acting, you can influence a lot of the findings or the reporting. But if we can limit it, I even think 6 months is too long a time to be acting as Auditor General. Maybe a month or 2, maximum 3. I think that will do us a lot of favor. So we should provide for having a deputy who is officially, has gone through the same process as the Auditor General. Therefore, him or she acting should not be a problem. But then there should be a limit on how long the person can.
The asset declaration. with the Right to Information Act, and I believe the commissioner there has been one of the most efficient executors of their appointments. My question is the media and ordinary citizens use that law to access declarations?
This, I think, is a legal question, which you, the lawyers, should help us with. But with my layman point of view, I'm of the opinion that the provisions in the Constitution are superior to the provisions in an Act of Parliament. And if you read Article 286, it provides the conditions under which the declaration may be made known. Say if a court requests for it or trial or use some processes. So when I was in office, I got a lot of those requests for so and so, and I said they should go to court for court to interpret whether this their mandate also fall under the Constitution before I could make it available. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think Dr. Asante to prosecute some of the cases in the absence or in the belief that the Attorney General cannot act. I don't think the DPP will have that nerve to act. He's himself a civil servant and he works under the Attorney General. So perhaps we should rather strengthen the Office of the Special Prosecutor if we can find space by amending the authority given to the Attorney General to prosecute all criminal cases. Because as it is now, like Domelovu said, although he's not a lawyer, he is appointed by an act, but the Constitution appoints the Attorney General. And his office, therefore will take precedence over that of the OSP. And when it comes to private prosecution, I think the power has always been there. There's an old authority where we saw our friend Willie Amafiu appearing as a private prosecutor. There's one authority somewhere. But if you look at Article 88.4, you find that all offenses prosecuted in the name of the people of Ghana shall be at the suit of the Attorney General or any other person authorized by him in accordance with any law. So there is no difficulty with getting a private prosecutor. He has the power to appoint any other person, but I think they do so by executive instrument. Now, the issue of collecting, statistical service collecting data to avoid inflation and the rest. I think my friend Domelovu would agree with me that we have what we call the internal audit. And so if every organization has internal audit, why can't they do the work before the external auditors come? The internal auditors should look at the procurement. They should be able to find out whether what you are doing is correct or not. So if he does his work well, the external auditor will have very little to do. But we are supposed to have internal auditors who are not working. Is that not the case? They sit there and they don't act properly. They are also influenced by the political class. They tell them what to do. Approve, come on my friend, approve this thing, bring it. It is for him to say that what we are going to do is wrong. But we don't use the internal audits well. And that's why we end up having all these difficulties. Now, with the political parties' control, I think it's very important to look at it if there are ways of looking at it. Now we are hearing stories like if it is the delegate system which is leading to the corruption, because during the internal primaries, you rely on the delegates to appoint or elect one. Can we have a situation where the people would first appoint the presidential candidate, for the presidential candidate now to appoint the National Executive Committee, we are told, as it obtains in the US? When you have your presidential candidate, he appoints the executives of the party. It's not everybody who is going through elections. It looks nice, but what happens to the lower structures? The constituencies, the electoral officers, the police station executives and the rest. What are we going to do with that? Except to say that maybe there's not much of pressure in those areas, and therefore, once you get the National Executive Committee members, once you get a president appointing the National Executive Committee members, the rest will just fall in line. Perhaps we may have to do that. Yes, with the opening of the envelopes during the declaration of assets, I think my own experience is that they will ask you to open it in front of them to look at whether you have even filled the form correctly. Whether you have filled the form correctly, and then whether you have signed it. And so if the way you answered the question is not, does not clarify the issue, they will now tell you that, look, this way, what you have said doesn't answer whether you are the owner. So change it and do it properly. So I remember when we went through that kind of situation. But as I'm asking us whether we have declared our assets, and I think the answer was that the forms had not been supplied us. My friend here can confirm. So they gave us time to come down, to come and fill the forms. Oh yeah, and return, I remember. So I came there, I went to the office, I filled my forms. They gave me the form, I refilled it, and returned them. So that is something like we are saying, if it should be filled before you take office, it's better. It's better that you fill these forms. Because I remember that was the issue. The auditors were insisting that we should bring out the forms, which we have filled. We said we didn't have the forms. They said the forms were not available.
Who is the custodian of the form?
I think the Auditor General.
The Auditor General?
Yes. He didn't supply the forms. So we didn't have
the blank form. Mm-hmm. You supply the blank form or the filled form?
The asset declaration form is printed by the Auditor General and given to all the people who have to declare.
Who have to declare.
I see. Yes. However, we started the process where we created an IT platform and we tested that, and that is supposed to be used, but it's water has passed through under the bridge, so it didn't work. Otherwise, it will address your issue, because it doesn't matter where you are.
It cut across almost all of us. All of us were involved.
Yes.
We said we didn't have the forms. We couldn't find them. We didn't know where the forms are.
They had one answer.
Meanwhile,
because they had a group, so they decided the answer.
We didn't have it. No, it's true. We simply did not have the forms. It is
publicly accessible form.
Yeah, it should be publicly online, accessible.
There's nothing secret about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It did not work.
Why did it work?
I finished.
It worked.
So I have finished my issues from this side.
Wow. So many ways to defeat a good idea, right? Yeah, so the issue of the internal audit versus the...
Yes. The current form and structure of internal audit in the public sector is not fit for purpose. What happens is that under the Internal Audit Act 2000, all these internal auditors, they belong to the various MDAs or ministries, departments, and agencies where they audit. So their promotion, their transfers, their welfare, their salary is the responsibility of the chief director, who he or she is auditing. So when you submit your report and the report is not good, from the chief director's point of view, he tell you, your colleague in Boku wants to come to Ghana. Do you want to go there? Because you don't seem to be part of, many people don't consider outside Accra as Ghana. So they say they want to come to Ghana. So if you want to go outside Ghana, then you can send you there. The normal answer that said, this is the zero draft. We will bring another draft with your input. So when I was in office, actually as Auditor General, it will surprise you that several internal auditors, they send me a blank copy of their original report and say that the official one will come, but this is what actually we had. Because they are afraid of the spending officer, what may happen. So many times on the tip off from them, I send an audit team to go and review the same transaction and we capture it. So there has been a bill which has been on the drawing line for God knows how long, which is supposed to take the internal auditors away from the ministries, department, and agencies and put them under the internal audit agency. So there will be like the external auditors, the audit service staff. Therefore, they will be independent and they can do their work professionally, they can be trained and etc. So I think that is the major deficiency in internal audit. Because the guy who ensures that you can be promoted, demoted, whether you can put a clause there to take all of them away or they should legislate on internal auditing, I think it will help us.
But if we do it the way you are proposing, or the way the big 2 layers of external auditors, essentially, the IAA sends its own auditors, and then your office goes, your former office goes later on to audit the same institution.
Yeah, the executive, remember, is the same as the executive. Okay. Let me give you another example which defeats that. If you go to Accountant General, Accountant General recruits all the accountants and send them to the MDAs. So they report to the Accountant General. That's why at times the accountant is more powerful than the internal auditor. Because if the controller and Accountant General does not agree with what is happening, there is nothing you can do to the accountant who is there. But the internal auditor is at the mercy of the spending officer. So if you check the sub-region, most of the internal auditors, they belong to the agency. And then they are posted to, remember in public service, we can post people to various institutions. So they belong to the agency and they are posted. So their independence is intact. They are well remunerated. In fact, even their professional training. For instance, health will not prioritize training of internal auditors. Education will not prioritize, I'm sure even EC will not prioritize training of internal auditors. They will prefer training electoral officers and etc. So we need to help them come together, being professional and even monitored. Their programs should be even reviewed to see what kind of audit plan are you preparing, etc.
Yeah, so the internal audit agency's auditors would be like the auditors for the executive. And then you would be the officer of parliament that comes to audit the executive body for,
Exactly, that is the role of internal audit. Internal audit is part of management. So they are there to provide services to the executive. So if you don't listen to them, then their report becomes the basis of the external auditor. And in many jurisdictions, the external auditor does not suffer the way we do here. Because the internal auditors are quite independent. And so when you go, you can pick their report and just follow up on issues which have not been addressed. But here, it is not the same. If you are through the internal auditor, he will tell you that this is the official report, but I have other issues. And then they will reveal that to you. Let me be honest with you, most of the findings of the Supreme Audit Institution come from the internal auditors. but not officially. It's unofficial.
The point is, I think we have an internal audit service. But this don't we?
There's an internal audit agency.
We do have. But the point I'm looking at is how do they train the people within that before you do a procurement?
Oh, the spending officers.
Yes, those inside there should check whatever you are doing. I was insisting upon it that let the internal auditor look at what we are going to do. If he clears it, no external auditor will come and disturb me. And I did that quite efficiently. No external auditor came and had any issues. So the way you are going now, like Chama is saying, then we have two levels. One will be the internal auditor auditing, and then the external auditor also auditing. But what about if they train the people within properly, that they are able to do their work? They do before you procure anything, pass it through the internal auditor. Let him clear it for you that this thing is proper or is against the law. So when the external auditors come, there will not be much work to do. But they sit there and they connive or take instructions from their bosses and they tell them to just pass and they keep on passing. That I think...
Chair, all things being equal, what you are saying is true. Because you wanted the right thing to be done, so you empower your internal auditor to ensure that everything is done appropriately. But what about me who wants to steal some of the money? I will not allow him to do what he wants to do. And even when he brings it to my attention, I'll say, shut up. You are part of us or you are not part of us. So that's where I talked about, do you want to be in Ghana or you want to go outside Ghana? So to solve that problem, yes. And even in the corporate world, if you go outside government, corporate world, now we have auditing firms who do internal audit for the firms before an external auditor comes. So there are two levels of auditing everywhere, both in government and in the corporate world. If you ask the Pricewaterhouse, etc., they act as internal auditors in some organizations. And in other organizations, they act as what? External auditors. The difference is in where you report to. If you're an internal auditor, you report to management. But the external auditor reports to the shareholders or, if in the public sector, to parliament.
Thank you. I think we can take the remarks from Ambassador Anna Bosman, former commissioner for Shraj.
Thank you. There will just be a few remarks. I would have really hoped, and I think that you said that Shraj may be coming later. Can you hear?
Use this.
Yes. Is this one better? Aha. This one is better. Yeah. So, in any case, there's certain things that I want to say. First of all, I'm sorry that I came a little bit late, and I didn't hear all the presentation. But what I will say is that my learned former Attorney General here said that, you gave a very good presentation, and everything was covered. So I said, well, thank goodness everything was covered. But I think that I agree with a lot of the things that have been said here today, especially with regards to the declaration of assets, because I put that down as one of the contentions, one of the most contentious things. And then also the issue of the independent prosecutor, which we have spoken about as well. Now, with regards to the asset declaration, I think we've spoken quite a lot about it, but I think that you are absolutely right when you say that, well, if we come and give sealed envelopes, and I know that we are supposed to, but this is not in the Constitution that you have to open your sealed envelope. So if you tell me to open my sealed envelope, I can say no, and I'd be right to say no. Isn't that right? So there should be something which will compel us, or which is mandatory that the envelope should not be sealed, because actually Shraj is one of the institutions that is supposed to look at this, but we cannot also open, or we could not at the time, I don't know whether we can do it now, but we could not open your envelope unless there was an investigation, there was something in court before we could do that. So that's really, and the former Auditor General is absolutely right. If you put newspaper in your envelope and seal it, if there's no court order for you to open your envelope, well, there you are. And how are you going to disprove, or how is somebody going to disprove that this five-story building that I have today, even though when I came, I only had what do they call it? Chamber hall, or something like that. Yes, how are you going to do that? You see, of course, in other jurisdictions, I'm not sure that whether we do it here, is that they look also at your style of living. Yeah? They look at your style of living, and that can actually trigger, as a civil servant, that can trigger investigations into what it is that you own. So I think something like that should also be. I don't know how you're going to do it, but that's something that we should also. So it's the way and manner that you flaunt your wealth, because today, and then again, the declaration of assets right now. Who are the people? Who are the office holders who declare their assets? Who are they? Okay. And then remember that we have the people on boards and whatnot. They're also supposed to declare their assets. So you see, it's a whole panoply of places where you can actually hide ill-gotten wealth. So that's one of the things that we really need to look at, and how we're going to do it. And again, what Professor Karikari was saying about even having to not only declare your assets, but those should be made public. I understand that there will be by all means some privacy issues and so on and so forth, but there should be a way in which this can be done, because I believe that there is a way that this can be done, that your assets or your declaration can be made public, one way or the other, without waiting for. So let's look into it. The Constitution has already given us a framework. Now it's for us to see what we can do about that. Okay. Then I wanted to also talk about Shraj, and here I would have really wished for the current commissioner to be here, because he will probably be more, updated about everything that's happening in Shraj. But it seems to me that we had a big problem, and I think, Professor, you did help us also when we had to go to the Supreme Court, because we had always Shraj had Shraj is it's three institutions under one umbrella. Anti-corruption, it's an anti-corruption agency. It's the ombudsman, that's the administrative justice, and then of course it's the human rights. Or it also deals with human rights. And in all these you have corruption activities, all of them. Okay, but one under Article, I think it's, if I got it right, I'm a little bit this thing. No, this is NCC. Sorry. Anyway, in one of the articles on the Shraj, we had the power under the Constitution to investigate allegations of corruption. It was suo motu. At that point in time, Shraj could come in at any one time when there was suspected corruption. Shraj could come in and investigate. That power was taken away from Shraj. And it was deemed now that Shraj could not investigate these matters unless we received a complaint from the public or from whoever. We needed to receive a complaint. But you see how difficult that makes it. Who is going to complain? Well, in a way, we tried to also, at the time, interpret it that, okay, some of the media the journalists, we tell them, come and complain to us. Bring your complaint to us, and then we'll do it. But they were also not all of them were brave or courageous to come and actually complain. So I think that is one of the things that we have to look at again, whether or not the Constitution has given stride. Afterwards, with the Chief Justice, we had some kind of discussion afterwards where I think she may have recognized at the point that actually she had weakened us. We had been undermined. Perhaps that was not something that was intended, because of course the court or the judges, the decision was 4-1, I believe, was 4-1, something like that, 4-1, and therefore I am sure that on their side, although I did not agree, of course, but on their side there must have been some very, shall I say, some very, no, not twisting, no. There were some reasons, maybe justifiable reasons why they said that. But I believe that we have the opportunity now to look into that again. So that's, yeah. So because the Constitution, as you see it, has a lot of strong points. The problem is us, the people. The problem is leadership. The problem is the way and manner that we interpret things to our own, advantage. Remember that for a good governance system, what should they be? First, strong systems. The former Auditor General talked about, we must have these strong, robust systems. The second thing that we need to have also is sanctions. If you don't have any sanctions, well, you know how children are. If you don't punish children, they just do it over and over again. And then it becomes, as you said, Kojo, something that is it's an everyday affair. Today, corruption does not move us in any way. In fact, some people say, why are you people talking about corruption all the time? It's with us forever. But if you had sanctions, those same people would not speak the way that they're speaking. But the fact is, we do not have the sanctions. So that is also something that we need to, we do things absolutely wrong because we can get away with it. So as long as we can get away with it, well, we will. And the other thing, of course, is ethical and strong leadership. But that also brings in some of the issues that you have all spoken about, and which is nominations as opposed to looking at applications that are meritorious. Because and this is human nature, if I can nominate anybody that I want, why won't I? If there's nothing to stop me from doing that, why won't I? It's human nature, and therefore to have a process where the process is based on merit and placed on the issue that different people of different, well, of course, as long as they qualify, have the opportunity to postulate for a job. I think that's very, very important. We also have the problem within the Constitution itself of the nominations or the appointments with consultation by the Council of State. Consultation, rather than, if it's consultation, I don't have to take what you say. So maybe some of those appointments also, or nominations, if we're going to stay to nominations, perhaps it should not be just on consultation. Because then, you see, we have given a lot of power, as you have seen, and I'm sure that you've spoken, about the powers of the executive, which have to be curtailed. Not because we don't like our executive, but because that is what will help our governance structure. Too much power corrupts absolutely. So these are some of the things that I just wanted just off the cuff to say with regards to these matters. But the other one came up with regards to the acting powers, the acting, because of course, as you all know, I was a victim, shall I put it that way, of acting in a position for 5 years, and then after I was also brought back to act for another, until I curtailed it, for another year or so. But the point is, as far as I know, and Auditor General, you may correct me if I'm wrong, and also Attorney General, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that in the Public Services Commission, there is a clause which says either, depending on where you are, either 6 months or 2 years. And that if you went on leave or whatever it is, it was for 2 years. And then you had to come back. No, you could go on leave however you want. You could take your sabbatical or whatever. You can go on, what do they call that leave? Sabbatical. Whatever it is, you could take leave. 2 years, 5 years, whatever. But you needed to come back and justify why you have to stay longer than the 2 years. I believe, so that was there. And as you were saying, in other jurisdictions, after 6 months, it means if you do not do anything about it, the person is deemed to be, Otherwise, you take them and you put somebody else there, And yes, it does undermine the legitimacy of the acting person. It does, and so it's something like that. We must really do see to it that it's not repeated. But I think that the Public Services Commission has that in their articles. But we did not do that, So these are some of the. You can, of course, if you want to ask me questions, I will be happy to answer. But the main point that I want to make today is SHRASH powers of investigation of corruption. That, for me, is one of the issues that we really have to look at, because when you also say, and I've heard it from different people here, that, SHRASH can do this, SHRASH can do that, can SHRASH really do it? Can SHRASH really do it? I don't want here to be talking too much about the political parties or Parliament and their role in the undermining of institutions, because I'm sure that you've gone over those already. So there's no need to. I think that we recognize that. We recognize that there is also a problem looked at, and also we're on television. There's certain things I don't want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bosman. It's exactly 2:00. It's as if you were timing yourself. I was advised earlier that our friends from the GTV will have to take a break at 2:00, and therefore that's I think just about the right time to also take our break for lunch. I'm hoping that all of you who have presented or made remarks will return after lunch, especially Ambassador Bosman, so we can follow up with some questions. So that assurance being given, I think we can break for lunch now and reassemble here at no later than 3:00. Thank you.
Get ready! The Obonu Mega Cash Lucky Box brings big wins. Dial *426*4# on all networks. Follow the prompt, pick your lucky box, and win instant cash. It's that simple. Dial *426*4# on all networks or play on our web portal, gbcghanaonline.com, and win up to 500,000 Ghana cedis. Remember to follow prompt, play now, and win big with Obonu Mega Cash Lucky Box. A minimum of 5 Ghana cedis to play. Your lucky box awaits. The Obonu Mega Cash Lucky Box. *426*4#. Win big and win large. Terms and conditions apply. It's annually approved on the Caritas Lottery platform.